Hey guys, it's Matthew Zachary, and I want to tell you about the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, or the NCCN. The NCCN creates the treatment guidelines for doctors that help cancer patients lead better lives. But I want you to know that the NCCN also has guidelines for you. The patient guidelines were funded by the NCCN Foundation and were created just for people with cancer and their caregivers. They're free, they're easy to understand, and they're available right now for you, the patient and the caregiver. So go check them out at nccn.org/empower. That's nccn.org/empower.
Today's online health trends come and go. Sometimes it's hard to know which sources you can trust. If you're looking for a podcast that delivers reliable information on the latest topics in health and wellness, then check out Dabbleco, right here on the Offscrip Health Podcast Network. Hosted by nurse practitioner Claire O'Brien, the Dabbleco podcast is your new go-to for healthcare information. Each week, Claire talks with experts about what's trending versus what's true, while elevating women in medicine. Entertaining and informative, you'll love this podcast. Check out episodes like Everybody Poops with Dr. Will Bulshewitz, where Dr. Will Bulshewitz talks about his book, Fiber Fueled. They also make sure to cover the most important topic to date, poop. Or check out the episode on maintaining health off screen with Naomi Olindo. Southern Charm TV star Naomi Olindo talks about her own mental and physical health journey and how she stays balanced during a crazy season of filming. For more information, visit offscrip.com/shows. That's offscrip, no t.com/shows. The link will be in our show notes. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, I'm Joey Brenneman from Offscrip Health. Welcome to the tangential conversation companion to Offscrip Health's Before We Die podcast. We've fondly named this bonus episode Lab Before Slab. And these are the sometimes random, often fascinating, and always a little bit quirky conversations that happen around our production table. We couldn't quite fit them into our regular episodes, but we had a feeling that there are listeners out there who would enjoy them. So here are the Before We Die creators, Sandra Miller, John McMahon, and Craig Allman to geek out about the latest happenings in the medtech arena.
Okay, I'm going to kick things off. One of the things I love about working with startups is you learn something from every startup that you have the privilege to get a chance to hear about what they're working on. And it's, so you're constantly learning, whether it's about new technologies, business models, patents, you name it. And so I was just working with a group of startups, more mature startups that happen to be from Austria. And one of the companies is in the women's health area. And the company name is Breatheilo. So the word breathe and then ILO.com for those of you who want to check this out while you're listening. So this company has been around for a while. And the one thing I want to be clear about is I have no relationship to the company in terms of equity or any sort of interest there. And there are other companies in this space of women's health that address fertility tracking. But in working with this company and understanding more of their story, there are some really interesting things that came up for me. So one of them was they focus on not just tracking just for fertility and helping you know when is a good time to get pregnant and when are you going to be less likely and all of that. They really focus on tracking a woman's menstrual cycle because there are many aspects during, a typical sort of 30-day cycle that can have really big impacts on your life, on your health. And it turns out that there are ways that you can, with more information, easily prepare for different phases of your cycle. So one simple example is, using this device, which, by the way, all you have to do, it's a small handheld device. It's sort of about the size of a computer mouse, slimmer profile and so forth. And so it's a combination of that handheld device and the corresponding app on your phone. And that's how those two things work together. And all you do is breathe for 1 minute into the handheld device every day. And through the breath, it's getting a lot of information about your hormones. So, for example, if you're in your ovulation phase, and you wouldn't necessarily know that if you're just going about your day, if you're in your ovulation phase, it might recommend that you eat more raspberries because raspberries are high in B vitamins and antioxidants, and your body needs more of those during that particular phase. Some of the other applications are, and why you might want to understand more about your body as it's going through these different phases, is things like sports and women who are competitive athletes. And if they know that they have a big sporting event during a time when they might be, because of their cycle, at a different sort of phase, there are things you can do to sort of offset some of those impacts. Now, speaking of sporting events, and particularly competitive ones, I think John here, our friend, who himself is quite a competitive runner, and among other things, John has something to share on that.
Thanks for the content here to go after. I had done some research on, I think the term is anomopia, the lack of cycles in athletes. So, a competitive athlete from a biology standpoint will stop actually having their cycle. And so for professional athletes, it's actually, trying to plan when they want to have children and compete is a big aspect. But this sounds like it's really more focused on a more day-to-day cycle.
Yes.
A day-to-day use, excuse me.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I was a sex educator for years through theater. And we would use theater to educate young people. And the thing we would always say, and people were so blown away, is that you have to look at the whole cycle, not just when someone is bleeding. Because when people think about the period, they just think, oh, it's just the certain, 5 to 7 days of someone's cycle. But really, the entire cycle has so much information. And just by you can, if you start to chart the whole cycle and, so this is kind of awesome for me to know that not only it's validation on one end, but that there's technology for this. This would have been so helpful. Because I would always say to people, there's so much information here. If I can go, okay, the third day before my cycle, I'm going to get this headache. And I know I can avoid that by boosting my water or, so this sounds like it's much more specific information too. That would be amazing to have.
Okay, so first of all, Joey, you've blown, I think, all of our minds who didn't know that you used to be a sex educator. So we're going to have to do a whole thing on that. I want to download on that. So that's super cool.
A sex educator in theater.
Yeah, it was a theater company that was in response to the AIDS epidemic, actually, because it was once they did the document, they realized that teenagers were going to be in the next high risk group back in the 90s, late 80s. They were like, how are we going to get this information? This is before the internet. So they were like, okay, let's educate them through theater. So we created this very gritty theater to take across the country. And that's how we got the information out. But he had to look at the whole adolescent, so then we started getting younger and younger.
It's also interesting, how health is so much a factor of, or a function of, rhythm and being in tune with the external world. And we've kind of lost that, our connection to nature, not physically, but intellectually. And we don't really think of it in those terms. And we're seeing all sorts of stuff that's related. There's also the issue of food medicine, which is in fact a subset of our relation to nature, that, oh, you're in this condition, eat more raspberries.
Right.
Food medicine's becoming a big thing, and not in a sort of abstract or merely traditional, and I'll put air quotes around merely traditional view of food. and food as medicine, but really actually kind of cutting edge research on how our body responds to chemicals that are in food and much more effective in food than in pills.
The COVID-19 pandemic showed us how a microscopic virus could upend our lives and how unprepared our society was for it. There's so much more out there that we need to understand, which is why I recommend subscribing to Crooked Media's America Dissected, hosted by former Detroit Health Commissioner Dr. Abdul El Sayed. Each week, Dr. El Sayed sits down with doctors, scientists, culture makers, and policy leaders to ask questions like, how could new genetic discoveries change our relationship with our own genes? How could addiction to social media change our brains? Or how even climate change could make the next major pandemic more likely? To hear discussions on these topics and more, check out America Dissected from Crooked Media. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think is if I step back, that's fascinating to me about this, my mom was a nurse. So you would think that she would have been better able to have that conversation with me and give me more than maybe it was an hour and a half sort of sex ed thing that we all got in junior high, I think it was. But she didn't, she didn't do that. And, she sort of reverted to what information she did not get, from her own mother, who was born a century ago, right? I mean, this is one of the things that I think is fascinating for teenagers now who live on their phones like we all do and have a different context. It's going to be interesting to see, what changes they make and what technology they use, because they have access now to information like this, and they will have it, and we didn't. So, I have a friend who, for his own peace of mind, put a GPS tracker on his daughter's car just to make him feel better. And I just kept going, do you really want to do that? He said, it just lets me sleep at night. I'm like, I don't know. And so I've been giving him a bad time over the years. Like, so if you take the damn tracker off, she's 24 now. Give the woman some privacy. He's like, well, so anyway.
Yeah, we have to learn that there's some information we don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
But this information is interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I'm sitting across from this, this founder of this company, and, and she's talking about using it for sports performance. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What I mean, I don't understand the connection. Like, you have a week when you have your period, and then you have the rest. Other than that, what do you need to know? And so, then I got a start of an education. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because maybe it'll prompt others out there to really check out some of these technologies. They, in addition to doing cycle tracking and, fertility tracking, they do have plans for looking at information, providing recommendations for women who are premenopausal and then into menopause. Yeah. So that's sort of a yearish out. But there's so much that you can do, and this is just breathing into your computer mouse or the equivalent, or once a day. So anyway, I just thought that was pretty cool. And I look forward to learning more, and hopefully the audience will too.
So there you have it. Join us next time, because you never know where Lab Before Slab is gonna go. And for more in-depth conversations with our medtech innovators, join us for our regular episodes of Before We Die on this very same feed. Thanks for listening. Lab Before Slab is an Offscrip Health production. The executive producers are Matthew Zachary and Andrew McDowell. Our senior producers are Joey Brenneman and Ariel Nachman. Lab Before Slab is mixed by Kyle Moore. Our Lab Before Slab panel of experts and creators of the show are Sandra Miller, John McMahon, and Craig Allman. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome. Leave us a message at 855-AUDIO-66. That's 855-283-4666. Share your healthcare stories, and we might just play them on the air in a future episode. For more information, visit offscrip.com. That's offscrip, no T.com.